In a world where most people watch movies and then forget about them, these brave heroes join forces to watch them again and then talk about them. Join them in their epic journey as they go back in time, a decade and beyond, to revisit and break down films from a vast array of genres. Do these movies hold up over time? Are they classics? Find out on Retro Movie Roundtable. Starring your hosts, Bryan Frye, Chad Robinson, Dustin Melbardis, Lizzie Haynes, and Russell Götz. Coming now to headphones in your ears.
Welcome all you lords, ladies, and knights to the Retro Movie Roundtable. Welcome to the show where we watch movies and then talk about them. I'm your host, Russell Götz, and joining me today are my good friends and co-host from the Lilac City in Spokane, Mr. Bryan Frye.
Good evening, all. I'm doing quite well.
From deep in the heart of Texas, Mr. Dustin Melbardis. How you doing?
Bonsoir, gentlemen. I hope you're having a good night.
So from Texas over to England here. So we're going to be doing a 007 movie tonight, and I want to know who would be a great Bond villain but has not yet done so. Bryan.
I feel like they are really skirting the fact that they need a Bond villain who's a female, but not a henchman. Like, they need a big, bad female, and I'm going to go out there on a limb and say Helena Bonham Carter as the main bad.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I can see that. And I agree with you that we are skirting around that.
Yeah, Dustin, how about you?
I have two options here. I think no one would be surprised if I said Cillian Murphy. He's
That's
on
great.
the longest rocket ship ride. He's on a 15-year rocket ship ride. So that no one should be surprised with that. But my second choice, which kind of gets to what you were talking about, Bryan, Tilda Swinton, I think could be menacing.
Yep, she'd be good. And let me toss one more out there for you. I also think that Lena Headey would be a good Bond villain. Like, she's got that snark. She's got that deep snark. Just, she'll cut you.
And the world is prepared for her to be bad.
And she'll cut you so bad you wish she didn't cut you so bad.
We are all so aligned here. I think it's time to get a really good, strong female Bond villain as well. I can't believe we're all coming up with this. I'm going with Jessica Chastain.
Huh? Yeah.
Yeah, no.
She's got that. She's got that cult. She's got that face. She's got that.
Got that Oscar and good actress. Like, she can play the part well, I think. So
Zero Dark 30 face.
Yeah. Have you seen? Well, that'll tie into, maybe this goes into what I just watched, but what's the last movie you saw? Dustin.
For some reason, I had James Bond on the mind, so I watched The World Is Not Enough, which is, I think, Brosnan's third, and I texted you guys about it. It's definitely underperforming of his four. We all know Die Another Day is not worth it, but The World Is Not Enough is the one that I don't give enough attention to, but I needed to rewatch it. And I will say maybe it raised a couple ticks on my worthiness meter.
I like it. I like a lot about it. I'll save it for when we cover it again. And certainly, by the way, we did a countdown of our favorite James Bond movies. So anybody listening to this and enjoying this, you must go back and listen to that. That is a Bond fans fiesta, if you will. I don't know. That's not British. I don't know. It's a Bond fans tea time.
Soiree. No, that doesn't do it. A tea time?
I don't know. It's a good time.
Smashing.
Bryan, what's the last movie you saw?
I actually watched World Is Not Enough again. It was right after Dustin had mentioned it on our chat. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to watch that too. But I found out that on HBO Max, which is all I had access to at the moment, you can only get like certain Bond movies. They don't have all of them on there. So I actually watched World Is Not Enough before I watched Tomorrow Never Dies, which made a bit of a conundrum for me for this podcast, because I had it firmly in my head as I was typing up my outline and everything in superlatives that Robbie Coltrane was in Tomorrow Never Dies. So, no, that screwed me up. But the actual last movie I watched was The Drop with Tom Hardy.
Okay. And the last movie that I saw is A Most Violent Year, which stars Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. I texted you guys a little while ago and said, like, you both, I recommend this movie for you both. It's a 10 years ago movie, so it's a
Oh, good.
2014 movie. So I think that it's one of those movies that could come up again when we count down our prior movies of top 10 of 10 years ago. Yep. But it's excellent acting from Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. It's a different kind of crime gangster movie, if you will.
Both of those actors find their way onto our end of year lists all the time.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to see it. I put a big circle on it just based on who was in it, and they don't disappoint. It's really good. All right, Dustin, what movie are we going to cover today?
1997's Tomorrow Never Dies.
This movie stars Pierce Brosnan, Jonathan Pryce, Michelle Yeoh, Teri Hatcher, Joe Don Baker, and Judi Dench. It grosses a whopping $110 million in the box office. The movie cost $52 million more than GoldenEye, which was the largest increase in budget between two James Bond films. And this is, GoldenEye was massively successful, so they're building on the success here. So the budget was high, the grossings were high. Domestically, it made $125 million. So the budget was large, but it grossed more than that here in America. But globally, Bond is smashingly successful. It grosses $250.6 million globally. So a huge return for this one. It places at 10 in the box office in America. It comes in just behind My Best Friend's Wedding and one ahead of Face Off. So the number one movie that year was Titanic. And if you want to see an episode on that, check that out on our podcast. Dustin helped cover Titanic with Lizzie. So IMDb rating gives Tomorrow Never Dies a 6.5. The critics of Rotten Tomatoes are kind of mean to this, 57%. Audience score of Rotten Tomatoes also kind of mean to this, 53%. Golden Globe nominee for Sheryl Crow for Best Original Song.
Yep.
And Grammy Award nominee for Best Song Written Specifically for a Motion Picture or Television. That's a long title for a movie award, or so it's a long title for an award, but again, Sheryl Crow. Saturn Award nominee for Best Action Adventure Thriller. Saturn Award nominee Best Supporting Actress Teri Hatcher. Best Music David Arnold. Satellite Award nominee for Best Original Song for Sheryl Crow again. If you can't tell, people like the Sheryl Crow song. And Saturn Award winner Pierce Brosnan for Best Actor. So, Dustin, had you seen Tomorrow Never Dies before, and what was your background with it?
I was thinking about it. And now, one of the things about that Bond countdown was I had to bow out. I could not make that recording. And we connected over being Bond guys. And it's funny, with Bond, basketball, Saturday Night Live, there were certain things that when we met, it was like, what do you know? We're super fans of all these things. So it was killer not to be on that Bond countdown. But I think Tomorrow Never Dies is the Bond that I've seen the most, except for maybe Goldfinger beats it out. I think I've seen Goldfinger several times. But this is, of the Brosnans, it's the one I've seen the most. And I think I've told the story before about when I was a kid, hop on the bicycle, go ride to Blockbuster, buy the Winn-Dixie, and they had a wall of Bond movies, and I just started with the first and went all the way through. Whether or not at 10 years old I was allowed to legally rent them or not, they knew me by then, so they're just like, yeah, sure, this kid likes Bond. And maybe it was one of those like old movie store managers, like, this kid's got the right idea, he's renting the right thing. So I just went through all the Bonds that way. But this one has been, I'd say I've got 10 watches of this under my belt, and it is a favorite of mine. I'm also a huge fan of the Sheryl Crow song. And
this might combine with some of the things that you love. You love martial arts in movies, so this movie brings some of those elements into it.
Oh man, it's when you watch this after decades of being a martial arts fan in movies, there was, I have to reserve myself a little bit. I wanted so much more, but what I got was pretty good.
Yeah. All right. And Bryan, I know you're a Pierce Brosnan fan. How does this one go down for you?
This is one of the few times I've watched a movie that we have brought up in the podcast, and I liked it so much better than I remembered liking it. Like, I remember liking it, but I really had a blast with this. And it's for one primary reason. This is a very, very unique Bond movie. You've had different villains over time, be tech moguls, be gangsters, be Russians, be Russians, be Russians. And this is media. This is taking taking it to the media right here. And I mean, that too can be, able to top governments with a single headline. They say it in the film. So I applauded them for the variation, for the going out on a limb and trying something new, to acknowledging that this is easily something that could, I'm not going to say in this manner, but could easily happen where someone at the head of something decides that, I'm going to use this power for evil. Mm-hmm. So this is a very unique Bond movie, and I don't think it gets credit for it.
So Network that we covered last year kind of primed you to like this even better, it sounds like.
And I really enjoyed Network. If you guys didn't know, I was a journalism kid. I got my degree in journalism. My concentration was advertising. So I cling to stuff like this. Newsroom is one of my favorite shows. I really get behind stuff like this. I mean, this is as the bad guy too. So I mean, I'll take it any way it comes. But I really struck me this time around about how original this is for a Bond villainy piece, and really enjoyed that aspect of it. Like the main antagonist is so not threatening, it's ridiculous, but yet he is.
Yeah, it's the pen is mightier than the sword.
Yeah, so I really applaud the variation at going for something new, and there are a few things in this that held this movie back, but it wasn't the plot.
All right. This is my first Bond movie that I saw in the theaters. Now, I think I mentioned it on the GoldenEye podcast when we covered that earlier, that I was with Bryan present when I took in my first Bond movie ever, which was GoldenEye. And I was taken by it. I went out and immediately got The Spy Who Loved Me. I started getting a lot of, whether it be Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, I just started collecting these things like crazy. I didn't know how deep the well went when I was about 12, 13. And sure enough, this one comes out in 97, and this is my first one in theater, so it's very special for me in that regard. I'm a Bond super fan. I think I've said it 800 times on the show, so I'm not divulging anything new here. I like Pierce Brosnan. I think the current dialogue, and you can see with these Rotten Tomatoes ratings, that times have shifted to making him less popular. I feel like whoever the last guy who was Bond gets dumped on unfairly. I think it's always been that way. And I think that, Pierce Brosnan and right now may not be very popular, but I really think he's underrated as a Bond. And I think his first 3 movies in particular are grossly underrated, and this one being included in that one. And again, you guys mentioned Tomorrow Never Dies. I love all 3 of these first Pierce Brosnan movies. Again, I'm separating Die Another Day a little bit as well.
We all have to.
Yeah, but I mean, there are 3 really good Brosnan movies. I would say that Craig didn't have 3 movies this good. And that is a hot take, but this is what I want from my Bond. This is when I came to the character, and I like Jonathan Pryce's outrageous portrayal of the Bond villain. So it's outrageous, as it should be, because I think it's fun. It's exciting. There's a lot of action in this, and it's a lot of style. And yes, we don't ever really worry. We know James Bond's going to make it out okay, but you know what? I kind of like that. It's to me almost refreshing to come back to these and sit there and go like, oh man, Roger Moore, Pierce Brosnan, Sean Connery. These guys are fun to watch. And whatever we get in the next era, as we're coming off of the Daniel Craig era, I really hope we get that fun back in there. That's what I want, because this was a lot of fun for me to come back to, and it has been. I've watched it a bunch of times as well, Dustin.
As someone who really likes Pierce Brosnan, and I mentioned it during our Bond countdown, I probably did it during GoldenEye as well. Pierce Brosnan is a very underrated Bond who had the worst movies out of anybody outside of maybe Timothy Dalton. I think if you put Pierce Brosnan in Roger Moore's movies, if you put Pierce Brosnan in Sean Connery's movies, if you put Pierce Brosnan in Daniel Craig's movies, it still holds up. Pierce Brosnan is Bond. He has the toughness and the swagger combined the best.
I would agree with
Daniel
that
Craig.
part.
Daniel Craig lacked the swagger. Sean Connery is a very close second. I don't like taking a dump on Connery because, OG and whatnot, but I still think that if you take the GoldenEye Pierce Brosnan and plug him into any Bond movie, it is better. And I just think that he had bad scripts. It was the 90s. They were trying to overcome bad ratings by putting in stars. That was a mistake. You need up-and-comers in Bond movies. You introduce people in Bond movies. You don't bring in the talent that's already cemented, i.e. Halle Berry, i.e. What's her name from Wild Things? Like, you don't put those people in Bond movies. Richards. Yeah, you don't put those people in Bond movies. You put up, up and coming actors and actresses as the point, forward there. So I just think that there was a lot of bad decisions made during the Brosnan era that were not his fault.
Well, we will get more into this, and there will be spoilers that lie ahead. So we will be back after these messages.
Welcome to the All 80s Movies Podcast.
I'm Bill.
And I'm Jason. And this is the podcast where we talk about the blockbusters, the flops, and everything in between from one of the freshest decades for movies, the 1980s. So whether you're a brain, a jock, a valley girl, or a Jedi, we've got some 80s classics for you.
Do these movies stand the test of time? Are we discovering something new? Is there an 80s movie we're finally watching for the first time?
Join us each week as we dive into the cinematic nostalgia that inspired and influenced a generation. From the hits to the cult classics, we'll discuss our earliest memories, favorite scenes, fun facts, and our not-so-favorite movie moments too.
It's the All 80s Movies Podcast, now available on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe and happy listening.
This is your final warning. There will be spoilers that lie ahead. Now, Dustin, for those who haven't seen Tomorrow Never Dies since 1997, do you want to refresh people's memories?
Sure thing. It's a terrorist arms bazaar, and our White Knight, James Bond, is collecting intel. In a rare MI6 military joint operation, James barely escapes in a hijacked jet with nukes before the missile sent from a destroyer blasts half of the world's terrorists to bits. Directly afterwards, a British ship is sunk in what they think is international waters after a flyover from 2 Chinese MiGs. One of the MiGs is shot down by a stealth boat operated by the crew under Elliot Carver's orders, prompting a full naval response from Britain and stirring up the potential for World War III. Carver, a billionaire media mogul, is in the business of stirring up his own bad news, with his target set on worldwide media domination. 007 is sent to investigate his media HQ, where he pumps his old flame Carver's wife for information about Carver's plans. He also meets Chinese secret security agent Llewelyn, masquerading as a reporter. Paris reveals how to get a stolen GPS encoder from one of Carver's buildings right before she is tortured and killed. Bond escapes by remote control RC carring his BMW through a parking garage. With this info, Bond then halo jumps into the South China Sea, again meeting Llewelyn underwater at the HMS Devonshire, for they are both captured and brought to Saigon, initiating another escape down a high-rise, then on motorcycle through the streets below. Our 2 operatives decide that working together is the only way to beat the clock before all-out war unfolds, and infiltrate the stealth boat, leading to a massive firefight, Carver and his henchmen's defeat, and a dinghy ride to safety with Llewelyn.
Well done, well done. And this is as we talked about it, this is a second movie for Pierce Brosnan. GoldenEye was massively successful, and they look like they're comfortable. They look like they have found themselves in what they are in the Pierce Brosnan era. And knowing that, I think it's really fun. I think this is an era that got cut short too soon. It's a more action-packed era. I think there's more stunts. We're moving from action scene to action scene more, and it's very gadget heavy. Is another thing that I really like in this era. I hear this stuff, criticized and saying they feel dated sometimes, but I don't. I still want that cell phone that can take somebody's fingerprint and use it on a fingerprint scanner, or like have a taser that comes out and shoots you. The car is loaded up with all kinds of goodies and gadgets and stuff like that. I like the fun. This puts the fun in spy work to me, and I just have to say that this is where we are in this era, and it is more consistent across Bond's part here. They go more fantasy in the 4th movie, but these 3 movies that he starts with have a very nice, consistent level. It's interesting. Some of the other, Connery and Bond and more, like they almost the pendulum swinging back and forth between more realistic or low on level gadgets, and then next time Q-Lab will be real heavy and stuff. So it's interesting that they seem more confident. They settle in when they know what they are, and it's working for them. Clearly, it's working at the box office, too. So what about you, Dustin? Do you like the fun and the gadgets that we have here?
Yes, I do. And this is I would consider it a staple of a Bond movie. If there's anybody that's in a Bond audience saying, I don't really like the laser on the watch, I don't know what you're here for. One of the things that had been brought up years ago, maybe 15 years ago, is that Bond is not Bourne. And if you're looking for a Bourne movie, some Bond movies will scratch that itch, but it's not the same. Spy, fun, comedy, sex. There's a lot of fun stuff about Bond and a lot of suave under the covers, we'll say. Like, so much about what makes the character entertaining is about the fun. It's about the gadgets. It's about the wordplay. There's some of it that's so bad it's good. Oh, this guy's starting to have an edifice complex. I mean, please kill me. But the idea is that's what makes it fun. We aren't looking. It doesn't even have to be that realistic. Now, do we need to have the pendulum swing all the way to Batman holding a bomb, throwing it off of the dock, or a bat shark repellent? No, we don't need to go that nuts with it. But it is very fun to see he's given this arsenal. How does he use it? And we get that cell phone thing. The fingerprint scanner comes up. What do you know? That's nice. That was convenient. I texted you guys a month ago saying something about like the ejector seat in one of the early Bonds, but like that might seem crazy, but it's fun. Being able to see him use his arsenal is great, and it keeps, at least rest in peace. It kept Desmond Llewellyn's Q on screen for just enough that we needed him.
Oh, isn't he? He's a treasure at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Bryan,
grow up, 007. Yeah, it's so much like you could say, oh, it takes too long to get all of his stuff. No, it doesn't. It's fun. That's exactly what the movies are going for.
We have a high kill count in this movie. Some people, the body count on this one is highly contested. It ranges anywhere from 47 to 197. So, regardless, Brosnan is definitely a killer. There's more people getting shot up. There's more gunfights. There's more explosions, certainly than in prior eras. But again, there's a sense of levity. What we're doing here at the same time. Again, gadgets and guns, Bryan. Are you having fun?
Yes, but I will say it is probably one of the larger detractors of this movie. And
Really?
I'm not saying that for me. I'm just saying that as the pendulum swings, I've never really felt shorted in a Bond movie. Like, if you want to go less is more with a Daniel Craig movie, I can roll with that. If you want to go with a Pierce Brosnan with a bunch of gadgets, I get that. But I will say this, a lot of follies that come with Bond movies, I'm going to cite excuse me,
You're doing
World
it
is
again.
Not Enough. I did it again.
Yeah.
I will cite World is Not Enough. That's my fishing boat. Really? With the torpedoes? Come on, man. Like, you get to a point, there is a ceiling for come on, man gadgets. And some of these movies, Thunderball was one of them.
Love Thunderball.
And I do too. But there's a ceiling where you see it and you're just like,
Yeah.
ouch. And this one definitely hits, like, Brosnan movies by and large. I think Goldeneye was perfect with its, like, you got the pen that blows up, you got the grenade pen, you get the watch. Like, it really didn't overdo it. Like, it wasn't a remote controlled car.
That is cool, man.
In a Nokia cell phone. I'm just saying that you can overdo the gadgets. And
I see what you're saying.
Brosnan's movies do flirt a lot with overdoing the gadgets. Like, make them practical. Don't make them ridiculous.
The remote control car is practical and ridiculous. And that is something where I was afraid going into this. Like, is that scene where he's remote controlling his car, is it going to be too much? Is my adult mind going to expose teenage Dustin to be like, that's stupid? And I like armed myself against it. I protected myself against trying to focus on the practical, be like, nope, this is awesome and cool and I love it.
Well, here's the thing. It helps that you literally drive the car across the street off the top of a parking garage, and it lands through an Avis rental car unit, and then the little and then it's like safe destination, and like I mean, like it's just like
there are
makes you
huge
laugh.
there are huge chunks of that scene where he is not touching that mouse pad, and
It doesn't matter.
how do you like the one that really bothered me the most this watch through was how do you know at what height they're going to put the cord across to have it snap it?
Oh no, there's no way he knows that. There's no way.
Like like when that thing pops up to snap, like I was like,
yeah. And hey, is the rocket launcher guy aiming for the broken windshield? Like, everybody knows if you played Halo as a kid, you aim at the feet, right? So like, I don't know what the deal is, but like I had to really, and that's I think something that is a concession of if you're watching a Bond film as a Bond fan is, are you willing to suspend belief a little bit?
Oh, of course.
That's the point. And yeah, so if I do see, I thought the world is not enough. Boat scene went on too long, and there's a bunch of
but see, that's how I feel about the car scene in this. I feel like it went on too long. They pushed the envelope with the gadgets. They could have been like, you know what? One of the best parts of this car scene is where he drops the caltrops and it busts the tires, and then he has to drive back over them. He runs over him again. It flattens his tires. He hits a button, and they reinflate, and he laughs about it.
Yes, he laughs.
and because he's like, that's a thing. So, like that's excellent. That's excellent because not only was it unexpected, I think, to him, but it was also like, you know, that's a reasonable thing to have happen. So if you keep something like that, but then cut the let's break this cable that was totally unnecessary to add a completely unfeasible piece of that car. So if you shorten it a little bit, shorten it a little bit, you can add, you know, you can leave the rockets, you can have it go through a wall into an Avis, you can let them control it without ever really controlling it. All of that is fine. But it's when you push the envelope, you add that one too many things, that's where you're just like, less. Just a little less, and that would have been awesome.
Would you say that two people co-piloting a BMW motorcycle through Bangkok is pushing the envelope a little bit while handcuffed to one another?
I love it.
At least that's analog. Like at least they, you know, like at least that's analog. Like it's just.
They must be thinking like, oh, okay, we need something else for this car to do. No, you don't actually, because you've also got Llewelyn just grabbing a crowbar and knocking the lock off of a closing gated truck bed, and a bunch of barrels fall out. Like that was that. If you need a going forward quick move on the fly, you got one. You had others too. So it's, I mean, and maybe it's because we have so much action in this movie. They're like, how do we get more in? I think a little more time in the editing room floor, like snip that out.
The 90s,
I agree with you here.
The 90s were big on their flaming barrels, man. I'm telling you, if you ever, and it spread into video games too. If you ever needed bailed out of a situation, there was a flaming barrel there to shoot to bail you out of that situation, man. I've never, like, you drive around town. I challenge our listeners, drive around town, find one flaming barrel, but anywhere you need one, there will be a flaming barrel.
Yeah, better be lucky than good.
I mean, I think you guys are fixating on some interesting points, but I mean, I think it's all consistent. Elliot Carver is a ridiculously exaggerated villain. I think that we get, you know, I mean, he's typing like without looking, like on his keyboard, like, you know, like he's like tomorrow's headlines today. Like he's like, like Jonathan Pryce is just enjoying himself as he's doing this character, and you know, everything he's saying is wonderful. He's like, I'm not denying that I started the mad cow disease, you know,
right.
Oh shoot. You know, like,
no, he was denying that he started the
yeah, like, so like he's got these ridiculous things that he's doing, and he's so great. I remember when I first watched it, I thought maybe I didn't connect with this movie as much initially. I think I was holding it to the GoldenEye standard, and I had seen some other very good all-time Bond movies coming back into this one. And then I came in, I said, this one's good. It's not as good as it should be, but I've grown to like it more over time. I like how big and crazy Jonathan Pryce is in his role. I like it. So everything's outrageous, as it should be. I like I like the wild and crazy things. I like things that make you laugh. I like Dr. Kaufman, who's like, the hitman guy who's just, holding Bond at point, and it's so funny. I just,
I liked him better than the German.
Stamper?
Yeah.
Stamper?
Yeah, I actually like him. Like one of my favorite lines, it's not the favorite line, but one of my favorite lines from this movie is, I could shoot you from Stuttgart and give the same effect.
Yeah.
He's great.
So I actually, there should, I'm not, again, not in my superlatives, but there should have been more of him. If you had hot swapped, this is just on the fly. None of this is in my superlatives. Just hit me right now. If you had swapped a younger guy for his hacker guy and the younger guy henchman for the older henchman, like swap their places and their lifetime or their longevity in this, I think this movie would have been better too.
Well, Vincent Schiavelli is awesome, so I'm okay with that.
Yeah, having the forensics professor / assassin on the side, focused on chakra torture, be the henchman, and Ricky Jay's great, but I don't want to spoil it too much. But yeah, you replace the hacker dude with the young guy. I think I'm actually on board with you here too, but I got to get into that later. But there's nothing wrong with Stampa because you need a heavy.
I don't mind Stamper.
Elliot isn't.
I don't either. I actually think he's a good henchman. But I would have preferred to see more of
Kaufman
teacher, more of his teacher, because his teacher had more machismo. Like Stamper was very one-dimensional. Maybe if he had a chance to show off some of his torture techniques, it would have been different. But he always came across as the muscle.
Yeah.
Kaufman was the finesse. I'm a big finesse guy. I want to see a guy with layers. And even when he's basically begging for his life, that's not something you usually see in a villain in a Bond movie. Now, I'm just a professional doing a job. Like,
so am I.
Yeah, I mean, that was a good scene, but could have been later. Could have had some more of him. Could have seen him at least once more. They say, she needs an appointment with a doctor. Could have had some lead up to that, so you knew what that meant.
Are you glad that they cut? I mean, maybe they filmed it, maybe they didn't. Russell, you would know, but I'm actually a little bit relieved that they don't show us Schiavelli torturing Paris.
They don't.
I think that was a bit of a relief, or at least we've described how bad he is. We've only shown you the box of tools that he might use. I think that was enough for wanting you to want more of him. But not enough to. I mean, we saw Daniel Craig's Bond get tortured quite a bit. So, how much of that are we looking for in a Bond movie? I'm not sure. It does add to the grit.
You leave and come back, and she's covered in motor oil or gold paint. That's the style I like, and that's what they did here. I'm especially good at the celebrity overdose.
Yeah, that's very good.
So, now, something that Chad pointed out, he's like, I hate Teri Hatcher in this movie so much. And I think that's harsh, because I think she's not sinking any ships here for me. Certainly no stealth boats are getting sunk because of her. I think she's fine. She doesn't necessarily speak highly of it. She said that she didn't really enjoy this movie. She said that she did it mainly because her husband at the time had a dream of being with a Bond girl, and so she doesn't necessarily. Some people love to do what they do on the Bond movies, and she's not necessarily enthusiastic about it. She was 3 months pregnant when they started shooting, so So anyway, do you like her performance here? I don't think we need to criticize her personally. I think it is maybe not the upper echelon of Bond girls, but I don't think I'm actually having a very hard time reconciling why this is a 54% in like Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it's bothering me the more we're talking here.
I think it's interesting that Chad pointed out that he hates her because she's not that big of a part of this movie.
No.
Yeah.
She's not around.
She's the femme fatale. She dies. I mean, I don't know.
She flips immediately.
I know, and I think that's the part that I hate the most. It's one of those
though.
Yep.
It
she's talked about more than she's on screen. Like that's the weird thing is I like Teri Hatcher. 10-year-old Dustin liked Teri Hatcher. it's something where I don't know if it's fair to judge her. She's barely even a supporting actor here. That's where it also kind of confused me when you said that she won a Best Supporting Actor nomination. She's barely in the movie.
I was going to say, she doesn't deserve an award, but on the other hand, I'd hardly think she's a problem here. And you know who is awesome? Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't necessarily come in the first place for, like, meeting, like, the most, like, dreamy. She's not Ursula Andress coming out of the water and, you know, Dr. No. But on the other hand, she's a blast to watch. She's totally holds her own, fighting next to Bond, and so much. She wants to drive. She's, like, fighting for the motorcycle position for him. In fact, Roger Spottiswoode, the director, said, hey, fight Pierce for the who can drive the motorcycle. And he told Pierce, he's like, hey, fight her for the motorcycle, make sure that she doesn't drive. And like the result are the two of them not knowing that each other are going to do that while they're, you know, doing these stunt scenes and stuff like that. They seem so in tune with each other, and they do speak highly of working with each other. And that chemistry here is awesome. It is so what they wanted to do with Halle Berry later, but Halle Berry just totally just bombed hard. And this is what it should be. This is really good.
Two things on that. One, I wish that this had been the will they and they never do.
Mm-hmm.
Like this really needed to be this really needed to be a non-sexual.
Oh, you got to have them together as the boat's going down in the end. That's how you make a Bond movie.
I understand that is how Bond movies are ended. I think,
but sometimes it's hotter if you don't touch.
This needed to be a no, and I don't think their chemistry was ever sexual. I think you spent the entire movie having non-sexual chemistry, only to have it happen at the end, and that wasn't coherent.
I want Desmond Llewelyn Q driving a little robot boat with a camera on it through the waters and coming across. Yeah, and then he's like, "Whoops, better turn away."
Whereas Halle Berry's character was literally what they were making fun of using Heather Graham in Spy Who Shagged Me. So, like, she was the spy who does exactly what Bond does, except as a female. That wasn't this character. So that's why it should have been and they don't at the end. And that would have been more gravitas.
Well, Wei Lin's character was written for Michelle Yeoh. And it's interesting. She comes from a ballet dance background. And she's not missed martial arts, really, until she gets to her movie career. That surprises me because she just seems so smooth here. And again, Dustin, you watch more of that stuff. You said you might get into a little bit more of it. But I was personally really impressed with her, and Michelle Yeoh got along really well with like Brosnan, and she said that he was a total gentleman. She was impressed at how working together, she wanted to do all of her stunts, and Brosnan is very physical and serious and about doing the work and the stunts, and it's really cool. When Brosnan talks about it, he says, you know, I really, it is hard work, but it's also a lot of fun, and I don't want to let anybody down. Like, he feels the responsibility of the role. It's fun when you hear Brosnan and Yeoh talk about this because it's almost like Brosnan is like a fanboy at the James Bond convention. He loves it so much. When you hear Daniel Craig talk about it, he says, like, I feel like I want to slip my wrist after doing a Bond and never want to do another one ever again. Or like, Connery's really sour with his relationship with the producers of this movie that he can't enjoy it. And, you know, Lazenby leaves, and much to his career's detriment. But I mean, Brosnan is the most enjoyable to hear interviewed. People love working with him, and everybody told Terry Hatcher Pierce is a super nice guy, and it's really fun to watch all this chemistry come together. I maybe when you know how it works behind the stage, it affects how you watch it on stage, but these people got along really well. And, you know, I mean, there was a little bit of Terry Hatcher came in late, and Pierce chastised her a little bit for coming in, and, you know, he said, she later is like, hey, I'm pregnant. And he's like, oh, I'm very sorry. But, you know, so like
that's because I think Brosnan is Bond. Like like his charm is like what he exudes as Bond is real. That's literally Pierce Brosnan as a person. So I actually think that he's probably the biggest embodiment. I'm not saying that he can do spy stuff. I'm just saying that as a person, he is the best embodiment of Bond that ever got to play Bond.
He's in the terms perfect of who bridge between Moore, Connery, and Dalton. Like, I feel like, so, you know, I've heard Pierce say in a self-deprecating way, like, I don't think I did the role right, and I wish I could have done it more gritty, and almost pandering to what people are saying, like, are his flaws and his movie's flaws now. But on the other hand, I said, no, I'm really glad you did it the way you did it. I mean, Moore was goofy, and Connery had certain elements, and he was intense, and Pierce somehow tied everything together and made it feel like all this stuff has been the same guy the whole time.
That's a really good point, Russell.
That's really hard to do, and he doesn't at all credit himself.
He fills out the top. He's a bruiser brawler as well, which Bond happens to be more often than we think. There's a lot there. The idea that he is a gentleman on and off screen, very huge for what Bond is, puts the Bond character on a pedestal.
Well, he's a super likable guy. When you again, everybody, we saw this in the GoldenEye thing. It's just compounding. Like, some people just sit there and go like, "Wow, this guy's really nice to work with." Sometimes. Well, I'm seeing a strong pattern here. It does look like Pierce Brosnan's a fun guy to make a movie with.
I do know that Pierce and Michelle were kind of building each other up to, like, we can do this. Like, I can do this. You can do, like, as far as doing their own stunts and stuff. I didn't have too much to add earlier. I'm so glad that Bryan went first when you talked about Michelle Yeoh, because I could probably go 20 minutes on her. The ballet background's for one thing, but her Hong Kong film career was a decade or so of a lot of martial arts movies. Everyone loves Donnie Yen's Ip Man from the early 2010s. Ip Man, the name of the martial art is Wing Chun. Michelle Yeoh is the lead in the movie Wing Chun. That's like it's based on. This movie shows her off a little bit, but not enough. But it's because we weren't ready. This was her first big budget movie. Everything else she did was out of Hong Kong. So she had the skills. She had the stage presence. The only thing that they really should have done was they should have given her a blade or a machete. If you've seen her handle a sword in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or any of her other stuff, she can do it. She's, for her figure, a strong build, I think. And that's one of those reasons, I think, Bryan, where I'm like, I like the idea where she doesn't, like a wilted flower, she doesn't fall for James. It's almost like we both made it. Let's both succeed together. Like, if she had the interest or something like that, or if
it didn't have to be about sex. It did not.
I mean, but it is Bond. But I'm with you. But the idea is, like, if there was anyone who would be like, oh, like the one who they have no plans to franchise these things the way that they do now. It's like, yeah, they bring back Jack Wade for things, or they bring back who's the other Felix Leiter. They bring back some characters who weave their way in and out, who are part of other agencies. How awesome would it have been to see to see James Bond and Llewelyn work on something again later in a later movie? Everyone would have loved that. But I can fanboy over Michelle Yeoh so much. She handles the two submachine guns akimbo. She takes out, if you're saying that the kill count is 57 to 197, she takes out a bunch on that stealth boat when she's got two submachine guns in hand. And very, very cool. They give her a throwing star. We see her big arsenal. It's something where the only thing they really did wrong was most of the movie they don't add in like the dubbed kya hoo kya. They don't add too much of that in. But on the stealth boat scene at the end, they add in two of them, and one of them is as she shoots a computer, she says "Hiya," and I don't love it because it seems cartoony. But if anyone's going to get away with a little cartoony thing last minute, it's going to be a Bond movie.
Something really fun I didn't know when I watched this before was Dame Judi Dench and Geoffrey Palmer, who's Admiral Roebuck in this. They're at each other's throats throughout this movie, and it's fun. We like to watch them just like each other. I didn't realize these are two actors that started they both were in a long-running sitcom as time goes by, where they were an item together. And so they worked together before, so they had their own acting.
Yeah, that's fun.
Chemistry brought in, so that's cool that they did that. I did enjoy watching them go back and forth. And there's a young Gerard Butler making an appearance as leading seaman on the HMS Devonshire, if you catch it. So
I did not.
Pierce Brosnan has had a much maligned career, especially in the rankings and ratings of films. If you enjoy Pierce Brosnan. You're listening to this and you're like, yeah, he is better than they say he is. Two movies that I highly recommend that if you enjoy Bond, Pierce Brosnan Bond, you've got to watch Thomas Crown Affair.
Thank you. I was hoping that was going to come out of your mouth. It is.
That's my number one. And the second one, which was actually even worse, like taking a crap on, was After the Sunset.
I haven't seen that one. I need to then.
It's absolutely fantastic. Don Cheadle, Woody Harrelson, Selma Hayek, Pierce Brosnan. It's a heist movie. Russell, this needs to go on your list. It is Pierce Brosnan at his best Brosnanianness, and it is like I'm telling you. After
you're selling me very well. I mean, you're selling past the close for me on this one. I'm interested. So
after Gold
is great. As Dustin would have to use his patented, that's a spicy movie.
Spicy.
There was a spicy scene. There's one spice, one chili pepper.
What this is the changing of an era. We're kind of getting into a new era with the Brosnan era, but this is also the loving memory of Albert Broccoli. He dies in 1996 before this movie gets to debut. So Cubby Broccoli is the producer who, along with Saltzman, started back in the Connery era. He's been there every step of the way, and this is his last movie. And so the movies are under very new direction. And, I think Die Another Day, the pendulum starts swinging without him. He did swing the pendulum pretty big and wild himself, but then the whole Daniel Craig era is the result of going over to his daughter, Barbara Broccoli, who takes over for what the series may become. And many people will cheer that on, but I gotta say, I really liked all that Cubby did to run this thing from the Connery era in the 50s all the way up to 96. So we're probably not going to talk a lot about the producer, but the directors really don't have as much control with the Bond movies. We've talked about what did this director do? Even when the same director comes back and does several movies, he feels completely different. And that's because the direction of the writers and the producers have a lot of control, more than usual. Martin Campbell declined to come back and direct this again. He was the guy who did Goldeneye. And no matter how popular it was, he just didn't feel like it was, like this isn't necessarily where you plant your flag and say, I'm the director of this movie. Now, later on, maybe they're going and collecting directors more. And there's been rumors of Christopher Nolan. Would Nolan like to do a Bond movie? And I think there's interest on his part to do so. And I would love to make that happen. But it is interesting here. Roger Spottiswoode, you can't necessarily tell the difference. There's continuity, and that's because the Broccoli family makes it all happen. So it's and Michael G. Wilson is a big continuing factor as well. And so I just got to say how much I love how all this stuff comes together for me. And it's amazing that you can have a franchise that continues to change so much and still work for you. So that's so cool. I know Star Trek kind of does it too, but I mean, Bond is more continually there.
I'm still riding really high on the Denis Villeneuve bandwagon. If there were any sci-fi aspect whatsoever to Bond, I'd be like, this guy right here. But since there's not, I'm just going to hope for maybe some future X-Files, something.
Oh, you didn't read about Mars Raker? They scrapped Moonraker 2 and they went with Mars Raker. So maybe that's
just like a Mars Raker go.
I was thinking about all the things you said about like directors not having any like the right real amount of control and planting their flag and saying I'm the director, and it makes me think of like all the ingredients for a James Bond soup. You have them, they're good. If the final product isn't great, and we know there are some Bonds that fall flat or that they're just too ridiculous for us to care about as much, but they still have the like technique and process to the things that are supposed to matter, right? Yeah. So our opening sequence needs to have these things, and if you rank all the sequences, there are some that are better than others, but they all followed the same like process. It's like a chef at a 3-star restaurant or something like that. Is you have your mise en place, you have everything you need, and you do it this way. Yeah, sure, the hotshot burger joint across the road might be getting the longer lines, but you're still doing things your classic way. You're still doing things this way. You have the femme fatale, and you have James Bond's multiple partners, or you have these the types
Q.
of dialogue. You have Q
cold
branch,
open.
whether it's Q or it's R. You have cold open. You have gadgets. You got to have these things, and if you do, then you've succeeded, no matter what Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb says. And maybe that's me just being too romantic about something that's been a part of my life for 30 years. But that's why we bring it back to, like, Cubby Broccoli with this matters. Yeah, the books mattered. And you're, as far as Retro Book Roundtable, that's why we got Bryan on. But the movies have such a large impact, and there are certain things that, or family members you might have, where they don't go to the movies. But if there's a new Bond, I got to see it because it's a big deal, and I love that about it. I'm a little too romantic about that, but I love it.
I really admire how the directors in this era also have to really do everything. So as the Craig era goes on, you're getting more CGI help. He falls off a giant bridge. You're falling into a blue screen and pads and stuff. But here we are. That's a real guy jumping out of an airplane and taking a very high altitude drop into water. And yeah, that's a hard thing to do. They explain, like, the tanks can come up and whack you in the back of the head, and they have safety crews ready to go out and get the guy. I mean, it's legitimately dangerous for people to make these movies. The stealth boat. It's a 54-foot long actual miniature, which isn't that miniature. It's quite large. People can stand on it. But I mean, there's so much detail that they can actually use real pyrotechnics and blow it up. And I'm really grateful that they're doing that, because by the time you get to Die Another Day, they're saying, okay, now it's time for the computer to do all this stuff. And it looks very bad. Like the Ice Palace and Die Another Day looks rough. Surfing on, like, that surfboard, like on the Parasol, really bad in the waves. And there are other movies making the mistake. By 97, there's bad CGI in here. And so I will credit Roger Spottiswoode. Yes, Dustin, he's doing what everybody else has done. It's seemingly rinse and repeat, but at least he's not giving in to what is soon about to happen, where there's bad CGI ruining action movies. They had a very large budget, and they're blessed with that, but he uses it wisely. And I think that, the actual pyrotechnics that they actually set off and doing things for real is something that Bond was really tied to. Real stunts and that practicality of having somebody, it may not literally be Pierce Brosnan doing all of them, but somebody's doing them. And then Pierce does a lot of them. Like he and Michelle Yeoh are actually hooked onto a giant banner, basically. And yes, they're harnessed in. They're not going to fall to their death like they had implied, but it's a green screen thing where they can put Elliot Carver's face on it. But I mean, they are actually suspended and being dropped down. I mean, They are on an actual motorcycle. Yes, it's safe. The helicopter's actually there. They don't have blades on it. They take the blades off the helicopter. They add the blades in CGI to make them spin and stuff like that. But they're blowing stuff up in the streets to make it look like that. They have it timed to say what would the speed of the blades be and what's going to look good on screen. I mean, they take
every street has exploding canisters.
They blow up. They
take
blow
a look
up
around your town.
They blow up a huge truck full of fireworks for real, and it's fun. They dump real water bottles out in the street, and it's a whole lot of fun. And even they were gonna CGI the bike jumping the helicopter, even though there were no blades on it. But then they had a stunt driver who contacted them and said, like, I got to make this motorcycle jump for you. I heard what you're trying to do, and I'm going to do it for you because I can do it, and you got to let me do it. And they did. And so, again, even the bike, he jumps the street. Now, yes, there's pads on the other side for him to fall into. But they actually drive a real motorcycle across that alley, and it's amazing. And, I mean, I just want to say, certainly in the 90s, doing it for real has massive dividends, and that's why I have to top my hat off to Roger Spottiswoode's not going to be hailed as some great director here, but I really give credit because there's a trend, especially in 97, to do things that aren't really good, to use the technology in a bad way. And I'm glad he didn't.
A little bit of technology used in a good way is the opening sequence with the X-ray shots of the pistol firing and the woman silhouette coming out of like a database. We're not looking at Matrix stuff here, but it's like one of the ingredients must be, did you do something new? Did you take the woman in the opening sequence and do something new? If you didn't, then you aren't doing a service to James Bond as a franchise. And I know you earlier had said this was a $250 million global movie. My number is $330 million. Huge.
Okay.
Worldwide. Only
I got
Titanic.
mine off of, Wikipedia, so I mean, yeah.
Only Titanic, Jurassic Park, Lost World, and Men in Black beat it worldwide. So when we think about like the Brosnan movies, you're like, it was number 4 in the world, and it opened the exact same day as Titanic. Like, to get those numbers and opening the same day, it was the only Bond not to open number 1 because Titanic was Titanic. But like this is serious.
You don't want to open up against James Cameron.
The ingredients of the soup lead to results, and you can change what it is eventually. But as long as you're doing it with the right technique, I think we're in good shape with our Bonds.
I did like that opening credits, by the way. I think the digital lady's a little bit, but I mean, Daniel Klang's a music video director who did that piece of it, not Spottiswoode, but the X-ray images are really cool. I like all the machinery components and the guns and stuff. Yeah, Brian.
Could have been more underboob.
Brian, do you like the locations we go to?
Actually, I just want to say something on our previous point real quick.
Okay, go ahead. Yep.
First, because you opened the door, you no longer have to poach at used bookstores for the old Ian Fleming novels. You can they did a big reprint of all the James Bond books, and they are now coming out 1 month after each other since last August. So you can now purchase those openly again.
There was another real thing that they ended up cutting. Ricky Jay is a magician, and Gupta's character, and they had him angrily throwing cards, like before he gets a call from Elliot Carver. Then they had to cut it out later that he actually throws like cards and impales people with them later. But Ricky Jay can actually throw these cards from very high distances and very hard from across the room. So they ended up cutting this out of the movie, but it's
Ricky Jay
cool
Gambit is criminally underused in this movie.
Well, they cut out his card throwing, which is kind of cool. I kind of wish they kept it. And another thing that I wish they had kept was when Q's meeting Bond and giving him his car, they dropped the box down. There's an actual jaguar inside of the cage, the cat. And then Bond raises his eyebrow and goes, "A jaguar?" He goes, "Oh, wrong box." And then he opens it up and there's a BMW there. And I was like, "Oh, how did you know that?"
I love
Spottiswoode said we had good fun shooting it. I just didn't think that it fit in there. I was like, no, it fit. Leave it in. It's so funny. So there's.
I've been reading your reports about pussies, 007.
There's another scene where, like, when Bond drives the car over the street and lands it into the Avis, that he actually walks over and he says, "Yeah, the keys are in the glove compartment if you need them." Like, and like, just like, like if people are like sitting around eyeing it, and there's a lot of humor that gets cut. There's some unnecessary dialogue too, but I don't know.
There's also a lot of humor that stays in. I mean, I think when he hands his key to a valet, I think he says something like, "Don't let her push you around," or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of humor that stays in, which I don't want this to be too long of a tangent, but we mentioned about Bond being fun. Is Casino Royale the only fun Daniel Craig Bond?
He has moments in like Skyfall where he says like one little thing, but I mean,
in general, I think so.
There's attempts at it in Spectre. Like there's attempts.
I don't want to be the guy who's constantly the Daniel Craig apologist because, like I said, I like both sides of the street on this.
You have to when you're around me because I'm hard on him.
I like the thing that's great about Daniel Craig's Bond is his humor isn't a dad joke. His humor is steeped in, I know I'm a BA and there's nothing you can do about it. It's the confidence level of his jokes isn't written like it's a script. His execution of his wit is born of a person really confident with themselves, not just taking the easy joke. And that's what makes the Craig Bond more realistic to me, because it feels like his jokes are more like, this is something that in a tense situation, you're not a ba-dum or a, this is something my dad would say. This is a tense moment, and to break the levity, I'm, making a fairly trite innuendo joke that isn't meant to make you laugh.
So in terms of locations, this is always a major staple of any Bond movie. We open the movie, we are in the French mountains. That's kind of an area where they shoot or perform the Tour de France through in that beginning aircraft scene where Pierce hijacks a aircraft. We go to England for a lot of things. Actually, much of what's shot in Germany is actually in England. So that newspaper printing facility, for instance, is actually the largest newspaper printing facility in Europe. It prints 22 million papers a week. And they're not in Germany as much as they say they are. The Hamburg airport's in there. The Hotel Kaminsky in Hamburg's there. They do all the miniature work in Mexico. And it's just an area that they're really good for doing miniatures in. Water's really hard, they said. Water's the hardest thing to do in miniatures because the film speed and the water speed is very difficult to do. So a lot of Titanic was shot in the same place in Mexico by the same crews and stuff like that. So if you wanted miniature work, now you have no desire for this. Computers probably do it all, but Mexico was the place to do it. And my favorite part of this is Bangkok is used for Saigon, and the Halong Bay was there, and they'd had a major storm go through there. They had just got it back in track, and this was a great moment to make people want to travel there again. And if Halong Bay looks a little bit familiar to you, if you look in the background, you have to have a circle on the screen to actually know what to look for. But the Man with the Golden Gun island, where Scaramanga has his island, that's on there from the 74 Man with the Golden Gun, you are back in that same amazing place. And I love it when a movie transports you to an inspiring location. So while I wanted a little more Germany than a parking garage and a mall, which again, I think that's a British mall too. I felt like I wanted more Germany. And, when we were there, but I have to say some of these scenes, particularly with the Bangkok used for Saigon, are just tremendously amazing and rich and a lot of fun. And that's one of the things I want from a Bond movie. You don't really get it into the second half of the movie, but I really enjoy it in the second half.
And it is such a big part of what you enjoy, at least it should be. And if you didn't know you were enjoying it, once you're told, you realize that, oh, wow, all the locations are the same kind of thing that New Zealand gets rep for the Lord of the Rings stuff is that we go to these incredible places. You get hired on as a gaffer and you're working on 99 out of 100 movies. You're like, okay, this is a job. If you get hired onto a Bond movie, it's like, I need to renew my passport because I'm going to 10 beautiful places throughout the world.
Michelle Yeoh actually looked back at the camera, like on behind the scenes footage or whatever. She, like when they were in Halong Bay, she goes, not a bad place to shoot a movie. This is pretty nice. Like I don't mind working a long day here. So, for sure. And
her first like a big budget non-Chinese movie means that she got a little bit of the luxurious life of a movie star.
Yeah. They prepared a farewell to Q scene, but they ended up not needing it. They ended up holding it back. They saved it. The transition for R and stuff all happened later, but so they were prepared. And luckily, we get a little more Desmond Llewelyn after this one.
Always have an escape.
Imagine a Bond series of movies where they really work on exposition, going in and out of locations in all of their beauty and splendor. Oh, wait, that's the Daniel Craig movie.
No, they do a great job in those.
The wardrobe here is more 90s. I think the party is one of the things that caught me the most. Like this seems pretty extreme and of its time. There's a lot of metallic clothing and the lights and stuff. Like I was very aware that we were in the late 90s at moments in this movie, most notably the party where Elliot Carver is having his media debut for his satellite TV network or whatever. So, they had real models and every designer wanted to get in here. So they were given tons of high-end clothes and fashion choices for this. So it's colorful. It's metallic. It's ultra 90s.
Yeah, I love that. That kind of party or a fashion show is such a great backdrop for a spy thriller or like assassination piece for like some big, bright, bold attention is somewhere, and let's focus somewhere else.
Yeah, and the hotel where Kaufman ends up killing Paris Carver, and we meet Bond there and all that stuff. The exterior of that was used in Goldfinger. So that's another one of those fun things. Again, in England, though, for that one.
I don't know if I've ever brought this up or not on one of these Bond podcasts, but I truly believed for a long time as a very young person that all the Bond movies had gold in the title. Because as a child, like running around, my folks or something would be watching, and I swear all I ever ran into was Man with a Golden Gun and Goldfinger, or at least that's what was talked about. That's what had been cemented in my head. And then when, I grew up a little bit and Goldeneye came out, I was like, oh, of course it's a Bond movie. It has gold in the title. And it was right then when I really started diving into the back catalog. I was like, wait, all these don't have gold in the title. This is weird. And I feel like it was just an unlucky chain of events, but I truly believed at one point in my life, probably maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, that all of the Bond movies had to have gold in the title and more or less dealt with Russians and or some sort of Cold War-esque piece, and
from Russia with gold.
That was really cemented in my head for a long time. Maybe it was just that I wasn't paying attention to opening credits or whatnot. But there was a very real thought that I still possess in my head of being a really young person and thinking gold was a necessity in the title for a Bond movie.
Dr. Gold. Golden Ball.
There are some moments of things that they did too that weren't as real that I have to say are very convincing. This whole submarine thing's done with green screen. They actually take scuba divers in a pool, but they're just green screen behind them. But that whole submarine's very cool. And during the behind the scenes footage, as you watch the storyboard artists put the stuff together, it's so cool with behind the scenes footage of seeing how every little vignette of this is planned out like a comic book. Somebody had to come up with all that stuff to figure out the procession through there. They had floor plans of a ship, but they actually had to say how did the hull get drilled through, and the amount of care that's taken to make this all come together when there is no boat is still very good. And similarly, when they actually had all the second unit director was sitting there showing all these little micro machines moving across a table or like toy airplanes and trucks on a table, figuring out actually what everybody's doing when they hit action during those scenes. It's actually really impressive to do that. I really enjoy covering these action movies because I actually think some of the directors don't get enough credit, because to make all those stunts come together, to make everything look real and have that many people going on, pyrotechnics, vehicles, and all that's involved, it's really, really very involved. And I got to say, Bond movies always take it to a high level because they carry high budgets, but they're always a treat to research. So I would recommend the DVD extras on this one if you want. Music, we haven't talked about it yet. Sheryl Crow, she's amazing in the beginning of this one. David Arnold brings some techno influences, but there's still a lot of classic Bond elements in here. Bryan, do you like the music here?
Oh, absolutely. I wasn't until I really started thinking about the movie, but I still have my Tomorrow Never Dies soundtrack that I purchased after seeing this, or after it was released, when it was actually released. And I got to tell you, back in the day, I was really getting into some of the techno house Bond theme remixes and stuff like that. And there's some hooks to this, so it's fun. Yeah, it's fun.
Maybe chief among them is the N64 GoldenEye watch theme. Whenever you press pause.
I don't know if you guys have watched any of the TikToks on that. It's I don't need anything hot. I just need an intro to a Bond movie. And he goes, check this out.
What do you think of this?
And he's like, oh, shh.
It's so good. I know the exact one you're thinking about. The David Arnold adding techno, or just adding some flair, we'll say. The
update.
The classic bones are still very much there. You still have this.
I actually, on my way home from work today, listened to the entire soundtrack, just because I wanted to, not because I felt like I needed to add in extra study time for this show. The parking garage scene is incredible with the music added. We don't have to talk anymore about what Sheryl Crow did. That is an incredible song. And but a lot of the themes get a lot of good credit when they deserve it, and this one definitely deserves it.
Moby does a James Bond theme as well in this era, so you can check that out on YouTube
Moby.
as well. And he has a fun music video. He gets into it. He does his own James Bond stunts and running around at small Moby scale. So that's fun too.
Chris Cornell's for Casino Royale is still very hard for me. Maybe
yes.
I will
top 3 ever.
I will tell you what's interesting is John Barry turned down the opportunity to score another James Bond movie with this one because the production team instead he could not do anything with the title song. That was going to be Sheryl Crow's, and he said, "Nah, I'm out then." So David Arnold was equally unhappy with it, but he doesn't have the clout that Barry does to just walk off. So he does the movie, but his solution was he wrote the song "Surrender" with Katie Lang, and that's what plays at the end of the movie. It's actually very good. It's another Bond song, and
That's
I kind of like getting the secondary Bond song. Now I don't want to give up the Sheryl Crow song, and I wouldn't replace Sheryl Crow with Katie Lang, but I will tell you this much: I have a lot of Bond song playlists and stuff like that, and many of them I actually throw in songs that didn't get used or songs that were proposed to be used, and there's a lot of fun alternate content out there. Sometimes it really doesn't work, like Johnny Cash's Thunderball, but this time this Katie Lang song is a really great non-Bond song to add to your playlist, so I really like it. All right, what do you guys say about some superlatives?
Absolutely.
For England, Russell.
All right, Dustin, who's your MVP?
Well, it's tough because this was a favorite of mine. And I go with Bruce Firestein, who wrote it. He also wrote GoldenEye. And he co-wrote The World Is Not Enough. We talked about it. It's 3 straight Bonds that are pretty fun. And not a lot of people have 3 that are great, and not a lot of people have 3 in a row that are good. And I gotta admit, it's not like my mind was changed, but I start to listen to some of the stuff Bryan was talking about with like Brosnan's performance with the script he was given. For me, the worldwide media mogul villain was enough. Then you add on the premise for the conflict is a GPS adjustment malfunction to have people believe where they think they are is wrong to create a global conflict. I like that, and I liked this. So I'm
this
giving
movie
it to the
says
writer.
GPS so many times because it's kind of new. They're like, the global positioning satellite system GPS, and even when Q gives him car, it's like it's equipped with a GPS, and I mean,
it's funny you mentioned that because the very next movie suffers from the medulla oblongata effect, where it's like, oh, there's a part of the brain that sounds smart. We're going to use this in every effing movie for 3 years.
And it was a big deal for a while, yeah.
Yes, it was. So it's not alone.
But yeah,
Okay.
There's a lot of good kudos to go around, but I'm giving it to Firestein here.
okay, Bryan, MVP. Is it the GPS device?
No, it's Pierce. Pierce is amazing. I'll die on that hill. It's fine. I'll argue it until my face turns red. Pierce is Bond. Like, you can say there are better Bonds, and that's fine. But you can't say that he's not Bond.
We are the right age and to come in at the GoldenEye period, Bryan, and I think that was a big thing for me. I'm also going Pierce Brosnan. I love all of the Bond actors and performers, probably up until Craig, but I mean, I really like what Pierce does here. This movie's just really excellent, and he's so fun to hear talk about it. He makes me happy to talk about Bond. Like I said, I feel like he's at the Comic-Con and the crowd, like with a big grin on his face and stuff. So that love that he has of the character, I think, comes through. He has a blast making these movies. They're hard to make, and he does a wonderful job. So, best supporting, Dustin.
As if there was any doubt, I'm giving this to Michelle Yeoh. We could have seen more, but what we got was enough, and a very particular type of Bond girl. You might even say she's not in that mold, but she's in the movie and she's great, and I love seeing her on screen and will forever. So got to go with her.
She's great. Bryan, best supporting.
So I gave this to Desmond Llewelyn as Q. I feel like in all of the Bond movies, you'll always be able to note a supporting actor with infinitely more screen time. But I just once on our podcast, I want to make sure I give it to Q. I'm giving it to
Yeah. Nice.
He's an institution. I love him.
Institution.
The best supporting actor for me, I can't not pick Jonathan Pryce. He's just so big
Very fun.
and so outlandish, and this is what this movie needs. I mean, the plot for me is one of those things of like, he's setting his stakes lower than most Bond villains. Most Bond villains want to blow up half the world or start a new race and topple governments. He just wants to start World War III for exclusive media rights. And
Yeah.
I will
In a
talk
big,
little bit more about
in a
this.
very large market, Russell.
Yeah, I felt like for Bond villains, particularly for this era, he might be shooting a little bit low. So we can overlook all of that because Jonathan Pryce is just such a delight to watch him just operate and dance on the camera. It's so good. So good death scene too, by the way.
I want to do like a, I don't know, 5 to 15 page alternative history of this movie. If it actually happened and this had been pulled off and China becomes a non-communist country and what ends up happening after he succeeds and gets media rights. I feel like you can do a lot with that.
Hidden gem, Dustin.
David Arnold for the score. I probably could have spent a really enjoyable couple of hours scouring through the movie for all the stuff that I like, but I could not go anything else but the music. I almost gave him my MVP.
Nice. Bryan, hidden gem.
Joe John Baker. Joe Don Baker. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I look, he's not Felix. I understand. And they try to do something different with Pierce Brosnan movies and not have Felix Leiter.
Yeah.
And
He's a delight.
I know that's a staple for Bond. So all of the Felix people out there, I get you. I truly do. But there's a charm to this man. Like the tattoo in Goldeneye and the fact they push through that. His enjoyment factor pushes through to future Bond movies. Wade is awesome. Like give Wade a hand too. Wade had his charm. He was not a player. He was a guy sitting back watching how the game is played.
This is so Bond though. They recycled him. He's Brad Whitaker in The Living Daylights. So he's like
no, I know.
It's a bold move, and they recast him as this reoccurring character. Bond doesn't care about this. They never have. Charles Gray is a bad guy. And there's another. Like, I mean, they just put people they want to be in movies, and they don't.
CIA Wade is awesome, and I love it.
I like it too. Jimbo.
Jimbo. It's also fun to think of it as like, is this like a joke of like British movie makers on like, who's the American? Oh,
yeah,
of course.
It's so
his Hawaiian shirt doesn't even match his hat.
This
like
is what we are.
And Pierce Brosnan looks at him twice in this movie where he's like,
he does, yeah.
What are you? And I love it. It's fine. It's fine. Enjoy the ridiculousness of Wade. I love Wade.
When he jumps out of the airplane, he got any American stuff on him? He didn't even say goodbye.
The swimsuit, the wetsuit, the fins.
Yeah.
That is awesome. My hidden gem, we talked about him a lot, so I don't have to go into it. Dr. Kaufman, Vincent Schiavelli.
Mm-hmm.
He is such a great character actor. He pops up in a number of things. He's got such a distinct face, but he's amazing in this. I love him.
Yeah, he's great.
I would have gone that route, except I don't think that I would have had another opportunity to mention Wade unless I did it here because we had already done Goldeneye. So
I gotta say, also, I considered picking Pierce's phone. Or Bond's phone in this one. That phone does a lot of stuff. It drives the car. It has a taser. It has the fingerprints in there.
It's got Snake.
I'm actually fairly certain that I got waylaid at Pittsburgh's airport overnight on Christmas Day with that exact same phone, except it didn't do all the cool things except
exactly.
Snake.
It had Snake stuff.
It had Snake.
Phones today do so much amazing stuff that this may seem less impressive to future generations, but that phone, as you pointed out, Bryan, did not do those things, and that is a lot of fun, fantastical imagination. So
I'm not sure what I would do with a taser and a fingerprint reader while, locked in, but I did listen to The Hobbit on CD and play Cell Phone Snake for an entire evening in Pittsburgh.
That's a great night.
this is embarrassing. How do you get into your car? All right. Recast. If you had to recast somebody else and put somebody else in their place, who's it going to be? Dustin, are you going to join Chad and dump on Teri Hatcher some more?
No way. Ricky Jay is great when used right. He's not. Instead, it should have been someone else with gravitas, but someone who also isn't a heavy, someone who's not going to bust up the kung fu. But it's got to be an American. It's a strange name to choose to, like, Gupta. So I went with Forrest Whitaker as this kind of heady, knows the play, is involved with other stuff, but isn't like the heavy threat. So I went with someone with just kind of an aura to him.
You're right. He is underutilized, and yeah. Bryan, who's your recast?
This is crazy because I actually recast the same person, but it goes in a different. It goes for a different direction. I wanted somebody more. I don't want to go with the classical nerdy person, but I went with the brother of the main bad guy from Face Off. It's Alessandro Nivola.
Okay.
He plays the hacker extraordinaire brother in Face Off. But anyway, he plays the brother. He's the hacker, but it's a younger guy, a little bit more spry, but also pulls off the glasses and whatnot. Anyway, when I think of his name in the movie was Pollux Troy, and I just felt like Dustin said it just wasn't quite the fit that I wanted it to be. In fact, I don't even think that in that car they escaped the explosion in the very opening scene. It was just one of those things where I was like, if you had this other guy, pop on a snowboard, a Bond.
There's also they have to do something to separate this person from being too like Boris Grishenko, played by Alan Cumming.
And maybe that's my problem. Yeah. Well, no. But here's the thing. My character, if you look at him in Face Off, it's totally a lot of Alan Cumming. It's very close to Alan Cumming. So maybe it's my bad. Maybe I'm expecting, or maybe I shouldn't be expecting to change it that much, and that change should be, but that's very much the change I was going to, because Boris was awesome.
Well, my recast is a little unusual. I'm recasting the BMW 750 with an Aston Martin DB7.
You're recasting a car?
I am. The Bond movies in the Brosnan era, I've been apologetic for Brosnan all this time, but I will tell you this much. It didn't bother me as a kid, but the older I've gotten to it, I remember my dad kind of sitting there going like, I don't like these Bond cars. And now that I've seen the whole body of work, yeah. I mean,
that GoldenEye single-handedly made the Z3 like the most popular BMW ever.
It did, but I'm not sure that. I just feel like, I don't know. There's a style to the Aston Martins that I don't know.
Oh, no. Listen, I'm not disrespecting that. I'm talking about the power of Bond.
Oh yeah, for sure.
They come out with the first Bond movie in 5 years, and they drop the Z3 in that. And they made that car sexy. Like that even that color still sticks in my head. That seafoam green.
Yep.
Like, dude. So BMW had their claws in the Brosnan movies.
I'm glad they gave him a BMW motorcycle, even though, like, for Saigon or wherever they are, like, that would be an unlikely thing to find, I suppose. But I did really like that.
I think if I did have to replace somebody, Samantha Bond as Moneypenny, I always felt like wasn't fair to the Carolyn Bliss is Timothy Dalton's Moneypenny, and those might seem like they're older, but she's literally the same age as Samantha Bond. So I felt like when they pretty much cut everything when the Brosnan era began, and I felt like that's one piece of continuity that didn't have to happen. You could have kept your Moneypenny from Timothy Dalton's Moneypenny, and Desmond Llewelyn got to stick around, so why not?
You know how we've talked about how before the internet we had like Star Wars encyclopedias and like books that you could buy about your media franchises? I had a Bond one, and that's when I opened the page to see like Samantha Bond in a Bond movie. Is that allowed?
It's very fitting. Best shot, Dustin.
Best shot, sliding a bike under a helicopter is pretty great.
It is.
There's so many, but it was the easy choice. So I'm going with it. I thought it was. It all seemed very real too, very dusty. Everything's blowing around with their loose clothes. I loved it.
I mean, it's pretty real. Like I said, they just take the blades off the helicopter, and everything else is actually there. So, removing the danger, obviously, making it safe to do. But Bryan, best shot.
Coming through the clouds on the halo jump when you first see the water.
Pretty cool.
I didn't really realize how important that shot was to me until like he jumped out of the plane and I needed to jump up and use the bathroom, and I paused the movie and I was like, I gotta get back for like where it gives that grating effect where he comes through the clouds and you really see the water rushing up and everything. Like that was important to me. And I haven't watched this movie in 20 years. But I remember that, effectual shot. And I was like, I need to watch. I want to see that. So I'm going to pause it here, come back to it.
My best shot is, actually following up one of my worst shots. I hate it when they do the slow motion. Like there's a scene where like Llewelyn like is coming out from her hiding place and it kills all the action when you go slow motion. 90s struggled really bad with that. But anyway, one thing I did like that was more slow is when Llewelyn is lowered into the water in the chains and Bond goes down to save her, he gives her, this would never work, the breath from his mouth to give her enough, oxygen to get the chains off. They have time for a kiss before they resurface. The lighting coming from above the water is really cool there. So it's a good emotional scene. Coming in though, my icon of the movie is the bike jumping over the helicopter. Like that, like coming in, I was like, that's what I will remember most from this movie. Best scene, Dustin.
The escape from Carver's tower that transitions into the motorcycle chase and the helicopter chase is 8.5 minutes. And it's pretty nonstop. That's a lifetime.
I love how they set up be very careful with the satellite. It costs $3 million.
$300 million, yeah.
And like Bond just like tips it over, like haphazard, like I don't have to do this to get away, but like knocks it over.
Yeah. Yeah. There's that didn't have the gravitas as a young teen as far instead of just like the speed of it. But what I'm thinking about is that is hard to do. Something you had mentioned about 30 minutes ago is like, give credit to our directors with big action scenes because it's hard. And looking back, I rewatched it like 3 times for the show. Like this is really, really great. Plus, like, there's a lot of ways that you could throw a wrench into how an action scene is supposed to go. It could just be that your protagonist is barefoot, right? Like Die Hard crawling across the glass, or there's a bunch of ways. But being handcuffed to an of equal skill operative from another country while you co-pilot a motorcycle through busy streets, and it seems like it works. It's so great to me. So that was my scene.
I also like when Llewelyn attaches the cables and just like seemingly effortlessly Matrix walks down the steel beam, and Bond is making his way with a little more hardship across the same atrium, undergoing fire.
She's wearing like some 4-inch heels in her like spy suit, but I have to presume that she had already gone through a more subtle infiltration where she's dressed like that, and that her standard issue spy gear is not like high heels like that. But then she just casually, she waits for the other diversion that they're all shooting after Bond, just walks down the side.
Bryan, how about your best scene?
I think my favorite scene in the movie is when they finally get caught and they're walking into the Beijing office of his successful enterprise, and the back and forth that comes from basically them playing off what they just saw, with General Chang and that sort of thing. But that I like that back and forth, and I like the wherewithal that our villain has intellectually over them. Like, you may have seen him in the hallway right now, but you're full of crap. And that's it.
Right as he's typing with one
When you
hand.
play, right. But when you play games, like when you balance out statistics of your character, like you're a strong character, you're an intelligent character, whatever. This is not a strong villain. This is a hyper intelligent character.
Mm-hmm.
And Bond's a very smart guy. Like you have a very even handed guy statistically, and you get a guy who, the villain in this instance, who intellectually is like, yeah, I know exactly where you came to that conclusion, and you can't bluff me that way because I'm way smarter than you. And sure, he doesn't understand changing the dynamic the way Bond does, where he's like, had a backup plan. So do I.
Yeah.
So you can always change the paradigm on someone like that, and that's what ends up getting Bond the W in this. But I appreciated that scene because it's one of those, like, you can throw me a curveball, which there are other Bond villains. If you had tossed that, that's what saves Bond's life. In Goldfinger, that's what saves Bond's life. He drops a couple things he's heard, and the bad guy rethinks what he's doing just in case he's telling the truth. Well, in this case, he doesn't. He says, Llewelyn tries the thing. He's like, you saw him in the hallway. You don't know anything. And ready to kill him.
Best wardrobe or makeup moment? Bond is always full of great style, or at least big style moments. Dustin, what's yours?
You're right. It is. And it was tough for my answer to be Bond's first outfit when he's at the terrorist bazaar. He's got this sick jacket on that I would drop serious money to have something like that. He wears a tux very well. And there's a lot of other fun stuff in this movie. I dress like Stampa, actually, a lot myself. But that jacket is so sick. So that's mine.
It is. And yes, he does wear that tux very well. Bryan, best wardrobe or make a moment? Is it Stampa's two different colors of eyes?
I never noticed that as a kid. It was only this watch that I noticed it.
I gotta tell you, it didn't hit me originally, but it hits me now. I'm really into Teri Hatcher's dress.
Yeah.
I like that
Enough
choice.
said.
I like, it's just one of those, like,
we're watching Bryan kind of stare off into imagination land, and
no, it's the like the removing.
It wasn't lost on me as a kid.
Half shoulder. I know. I'm just thinking about things that like really are important about wardrobe, and I'm like,
really important.
That's a good dress.
Initially, it's kind of busy. Like like one of her sides is like really like fluffy and like really decadent. It's asymmetric or whatever. But none of this matters because when they get to the hotel, the coolest thing about the dress is like it's all like held on very precariously. Like exactly, very precariously. And Pierce just minimally waves his hands around like Charlie Brown decorating a Christmas tree for just a moment, and the dress just falls down to the floor. Like and she's got.
It was a two pinch. It was a 2-pinch maneuver.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like with like blowing on it, like the whole dress falls down to the floor, and she's standing there just garters, and she has no bra on, but from behind. So I mean, it's spicy.
One chili pepper, guys. One chili pepper.
Spicy.
I don't know what's your scale. Like that's pretty spicy, man.
Well, any more than one chili pepper, we're getting to see something. So,
Oh,
one
okay.
chili pepper.
Okay, I thought you had to be like a 5 chili peppers scale. I'm like, what is this? What's a 5 chili pepper for you? Gosh.
Okay.
Blue is the warmest
Not-
color.
Okay, well. Everything's a 1 chili pepper for Bryan from now on.
Do it.
Change one thing. Dustin.
Teri Hatcher isn't involved in this very much. She flips right
Getting
away.
the chat in.
She's around
chat.
for 6 minutes. I think we could use more of her. But
It's the anti-Chad.
I'm uncertain if we have the time. Well, I think if you have more of her, then she becomes a more compelling character that people don't hate.
I'm sorry. I thought you said
I
she
don't know.
shouldn't be
I don't know if
involved
she's
in
hated in general. Like Chad saying that just took me off by. I was like, really? I mean, you can say that about Denise Richards or Halle Berry if you want to, but I am not saying that about Teri Hatcher.
I'm saying we need
I
to
don't think so.
fill her role a little bit more in order to matter. That's all I'm saying is that she immediately gives up the information.
She was
Would
3
it
months
be-
pregnant, and that may have affected how much she got in the movie.
That's not my fault, Russell.
Just these are practical things. I don't know. Bryan, change one thing.
Actually, Dustin mentioned it earlier, and I hated it. It was more on this last watch that grated on me because I hadn't seen it in a while. When she goes, yeah, and shoots the console, I'm like, oh, that seems like an Asian martial arts thing that we can add in here.
Yeah.
Let's have her say, yeah, as she shoots a console at point blank.
Normally,
For
I would say
real?
that, but but it
Damn.
ties into Jonathan Pryce mocking her when he goes, like he's like,
gives some
pathetic.
good ones, some worthy ones in the tight quarters fight scene where she takes people out. To do it when you shoot a gun, a key eye doesn't help you pull a trigger better.
And but here's the thing: like when he does it, it's mocking a race. Like it shows
That's
like
true.
a racial issue and makes him more hateable. When she did it, it actually fed into that racial issue, and that's why it wasn't as good. And it's such a small thing to cut. Like you literally could have been like, this is not a thing you need to have in here.
Well-
Unless we do think of it as some kind of homage to the heavy overdubbing of those kind of things in like martial arts movies, which if that kind of misophonia of like hearing those sounds or hearing those key eyes is bad for you, then we've got decades of kung fu that you can't watch. I'm not saying you, Bryan, I'm saying you listeners, that like that can really get on your nerves unless you are mentally prepared for it. But yeah, Bryan, that one where she just shoots, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, she shot people and scenery a lot prior to her goal, which is the engineering console that has no, subtitle saying this is the engineering console that stops the ship, and she pops up. Yeah, like it was just so contrived and unnecessary, and honestly, like if that's all, they were shooting everything in that engineering room for 5 minutes before she ever did that. Like, I can't imagine none of that damage had any sort of effect on the ship anyway. Like, she actually had to shoot the control.
It out, or you're changing it to like a female tennis player.
I need her to either not do the hya, like if you just need her to shoot the console to make the ship stop, that's fine. Or at least give some credence to the fact that there's a firefight that's been going on in that room for a solid 5 minutes, and the damage would have stopped the ship anyway. I mean,
well, my change one thing is going to be, I want to see the plans for conflict at a larger scale. I want to actually see him try and rule China by starting some kind of... I want to see him go bigger than just exclusive media rights. It's fine that he is a media mogul and that he wants to use that as his way of going there, but I want him to be so power drunk that he thinks that he's smarter, that he will actually rule in overtaking the media. I think his plans are a little bit small scale for Bond, so I'm thinking just go bigger than just exclusive media rights.
No, sir. No, China is the only place he doesn't have touch yet.
Okay.
The whole point
It's
of
worldwide.
him,
Yeah, he was trying to get China as the last piece.
yeah, that's his last piece. Like, if you are the worldwide leader in communication, and Bond says it, or misinformation. If you are the worldwide leader in communications, but there's blank billion people that you can't reach, that's what you're trying to reach. So everybody is drinking your Kool-Aid.
I was trying to think of how this could get grander scale, Russell, when you brought it up earlier. And I was thinking, this guy is willing to go to this far to set up this conflict. What on earth is stopping him from doing more? From really nightcrawlering it out to...
He's got a nuclear warhead. I mean...
Exactly, yeah.
To quote the next movie title, the world is not enough. I mean, keep going. So
family motto.
But anyway, best quote, Dustin. There's some great ones in here.
This is very embarrassing. It seems there is a red box they need in your car, only they can't get it open. They want me to get you to tell you how to open it. I feel like an idiot. I don't know what to say.
It's so good. Oh, thank you for... I quoted it badly. Chad gets on me for quoting things badly and incorrectly. Thank you for saying it properly. So, Bryan, best quote.
I know I've given him a lot of crap as being a more primary character in this, but I owe you a very unpleasant death, Mr. Bond.
Oh, that's good, isn't it? I know he's not the most memorable henchman, but that is a good line.
Oh, well, the thing is, I think he is a memorable henchman, but he plays into a lot of stereotypical henchmen that we've had in the past. And it would have done them better to do some differentiating just the muscle.
I think there's also maybe 70% of his on-screen time is unremarkable.
Yes.
So if the only time you get him if he's doing something very cool, the mystique is grander. If you just have him raising a radio to his hand saying they're coming around the corner,
or not shooting the person he's supposed to be shooting, or not grenading the person he's supposed to be grenading, like he really sucks at doing what he's supposed to be.
Well, so much for German efficiency.
No, they did say he goes, Stamper, will you go get that girl? And he opens a door and grabs her. It takes 5 seconds. He grabs Llewelyn and eliminates her as a threat. Well, in quote unquote, is able to stop her as a threat very quickly before he gets distracted with something else. So I mean, like he's okay.
Bond notices the camera that is the size of an icebox with a red light on it, and she doesn't. And he's like, Llewelyn, the camera. Okay. And then he grabs her because, it saw her. So, I mean, there's at least a little quote. Understanding.
Sorry, my best quote is going to be, I love these one-liners. When James Bond throws a bad guy into the printing press and then the newspaper comes up with blood red on it, and he goes, they'll print anything these days. I love it.
Yeah, that's good. It's so good, actually. I thought to myself, if we didn't have the drill death for Elliot Carver, that having him fall into a printing press would be really appropriate.
I did love it when Elliot Carver says, Mr. Jones, are we ready to release our new software? Yes, sir. As requested, it's full of bugs, which means people will be forced to upgrade for years. Outstanding!
Yeah. Yeah. He's saying the quiet part out loud.
Welcome to the world of software.
All right.
Nailed it.
We've come full circle on a 5-star scale with half-star intervals. Dustin, what do you rate Tomorrow Never Dies?
This, I could have come in, if I wasn't on the show for 3 years, I would have said, guys, let's do one of my 5-star movies, Tomorrow Never Dies. Then I watched it and said, is this movie only 4 stars? And so I mixed the two feelings, which is, it's one of my most watched Bonds, one of my favorite Bonds. I'm a huge Michelle Yeoh stan. I'm a huge Jonathan Pryce stan. I'm a huge Brosnan stan. All of these things came together, plot notwithstanding. Some of the things like Teri Hatch not having enough screen time or not letting Michelle Yeoh do some real fighting, which we could have. Like, I think it kind of 4.5 seems really right to me, even as a favorite. So I think it's the fairest score.
All right, Bryan, 5-star scale, half-star intervals. What are you giving Tomorrow Never Dies from 97?
This movie does have some flaws, but I actually think it's undeserving of being discriminated against for some of its issues, I'm going to give it a 4-star.
I'm right there with you. I'm going 4 stars. It's my number 15 Bond movie. And while that sounds a little bit low for being on the bottom half, I really like this series a lot. So that's still very high for me. I'm very happy here. So, Dustin, do you want to help us pick a movie for next time?
When it comes to Bond, we've got a mixing of genres. When it comes to other movies, funny, spooky, let's do both. Here are 3 comedy horror movies for next time. Option number 1, Young Frankenstein from 1974. An American grandson of the infamous scientist struggling to prove that his grandfather was not as insane as people believe is invited to Transylvania, where he discovers the process that reanimates a dead body. Option number 2, from 2000, Scary Movie. A year after disposing of the body of a man they accidentally killed, a group of dumb teenagers are stalked by a bumbling serial killer. Or option number 3, Dracula Dead and Loving It from 1995. Mel Brooks' parody of the classic vampire story and its famous film adaptation. It's going to be.
Well, we got to go Mel Brooks here, but let's go with the Young Frankenstein Mel Brooks and not the Dracula Dead and Loving It Mel Brooks. So let's go Young Frankenstein.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you both. Thank you, all the lords, ladies and knights, the Retro Movie Roundtable. We invite you to reach out to us. We want to hear from you. We want you to subscribe, rate, and review to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe on our YouTube channel. Give us a like on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at @movie_retro. Email us at retromovieroundtable@yahoo.com. And producing and providing this podcast is fun, but not free. So we invite you to support the show at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Retro Movie Roundtable. All contributions are much appreciated and will go towards making the show better for you, the listeners. As always, thank you for listening. Be good to each other and watch more movies. Brian?
A desk is a dangerous place from which to watch the world.